Of all the major events to miss, the one that I was most bummed about was affirmative action. Crystal and Emily held a fantastic panel discussion on the subject that I recommend everybody go and listen to. And since that decision, a lot about our society has been revealed. So-called fake civil rights groups said that we would be set back by the decision. Many past injustices were righted by the policy. The racial-obsessed media parroted their claims, and the colleges themselves credited their past diversity statistics with the policy. But so much has now been written about the past, and what I want to do is focus on the future. What is higher education going to look like without affirmative action? Fortunately, if you've been watching our show for some time, you already know the answer. Higher education in the US and their racial-obsessed bureaucrats are willing to nuke the standards for literally everyone and burn hundreds of years of academic credibility, all in the name of preserving so-called racial diversity. The plan is simple. Any objective criteria that can be easily used to prove racial discrimination against whites and Asians will be sacrificed. Any criteria which will allow for preference against these groups will be emphasized, made to be the most important. People called me a conspiracy theorist when I laid this plan long before the decision. Now that it's happened, it's out in the open. The New York Times immediately published the plan, titled, quote, "With Supreme Court decision, college admissions could become more subjective." It was all laid out, third paragraph in. Quote, "Officials at selective institutions predicted there will be less emphasis on standardized metrics like test scores, class rank, GPA, and more emphasis on personal qualities, told through recommendations and the application essay." Now again, why would this be the case? Because the case against Harvard relied almost entirely on objective metrics like SAT scores and others, which could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt Asian students in particular were straight up discriminated against in admissions. If you remove test scores as important and you lean more on personal essay where students of desired background can just write "I am black" or "I am Hispanic" over and over and over again for 500 words, it's easy. Once again, I am not simply positing this. Already, the admissions department right here locally, University of Maryland, saying, quote, "Right now, students write about their soccer practice. They write about their grandmother dying." But then she says they need to shift to talk, quote, "about how race affected their lives." One neat trick that the admissions departments are already going for is simple. Make the college prompt about how diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to the applicant. The incoming president of Mount Holyoke University, for example, she imagines a future question will look like this. One of the core values of Mount Holyoke College is diversity of all kinds. Please tell us why you value it. What will make you think to bring to the Mount Holyoke community in terms of diversity? Your belief in the creative diversity is all that will matter in the future. Whether you are good at math or science or English and can actually excel academically will cease to matter at all. So for the future, what do we do? Why should we even care? Let's start with the latter part of that question. About a decade ago, there was actually a big debate about the great awakening on college campuses. Obsessions by students and professors, especially at elite institutions, with race and gender. The debate was, does this matter at all? Who cares if Yale or Harvard or any of these school kids are acting nuts? How does it impact any of us? The problem is, well, they grew up, and when they did, they populated the elite institutions across the country. Those kids who led race and gender cultural revolutions at college a decade ago, now they write for the New York Times, or they work at Netflix, or they're junior staffers at the Biden White House, or the marketing department at Bud Light or Target. They are the enforcers of the ideological regime, and they will remain in power for decades. As you can already see now, from the freak out over affirmative action, they will not go quietly into the good night. It will be a total war for control of institutions and for the future. And the war really will be a fight between masses and elites. The polling on affirmative action shows that the vast majority of people are against it. 50% of people outright disapprove. Only 30% approve. Most people the rest are unsure. And I actually think that's very underweighted. Because even in California, the most liberal state in the whole country, when affirmative action was put up for an actual vote, it was rejected at a full 57% of the vote. And that happened in the exact same election where Biden beat Trump by 29 points. The people, and especially working class people, are very against affirmative action. For the elites, though, it is their religion. At least with the government that we have some Democratic say, though. But on the problem for those on the side of the masses is that many of the institutions that we're talking about, they are not small d democratic. Harvard obviously has to comply with the law, which still takes decades to wrangle with, but they don't get voted for. Even public universities, somewhat more accountable, don't face any close to the same level of pressure as actual government. And then what about private institutions, which are both elite by definition, but still important for the masses? Take this for example, I've given before, like the American Bar Association. It controls the entire legal profession. It's literally private though. You cannot vote for it. It's not accountable to any representative that we can vote for. Yet, it controls the entire profession of law. So when the Bar Association decides to nuke the LSAT as part of admission to law school to make the legal profession more equitable, what are we supposed to do? What do you do when you need a lawyer? Medical school, I've talked about that before. Reducing emphasis on MCAT scores, GPAs, in favor of racial admissions and essays. We have no say, but when we get sick and you need a doctor, what do? Those are two small examples, but there are a myriad of elite institutions which govern all of our lives like this, which are equally racially obsessed and will be fundamentally altered in the future. And what does that future look like? I mean, I don't really have good news on that front. We will have, at a minimum, a generation, and more likely, probably nearly a century, of total chaos. Because if you think that dying institutions just fade and go away easily and lose their power even when they suck, you're wrong. Take a look at cable news, for example. Or for a longer timeline, look at the Ottoman Empire. You can be useless, corrupt, lacking any legitimacy that you once had. As long as your system, though, works well enough for those in power, it can hang on for a long, long time. And they will fight even harder to maintain their grip on power. Now, for those of you who want a more meritorious and equal America, though, don't entirely despair, because the demise of affirmative action has heightened the contradictions. It has made explicit, which was once implicit, for all of us to see. In a relatively free society, that is actually powerful. Now, for now, you can still see the agenda, and you can choose for yourself, do you want to participate in it or not? And whether or not you choose to fight. I actually think it's important to choose to fight, and you can see this clearly. And I hope that all of you do too. So Crystal, my ridiculous garb aside, I know that you guys had a great and a fantastic discussion.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.